Okay, so here we have the psychology aspect. Um, as it's written, I can feel the side eye you're giving me after all this woo-woo with numbers and astrology and the things you go to psychology. Really? Is that how you love me? I get it, I get it. Let me give you a hug. There's still way more crazy things that we'll explore, but just so you see, when you go with this astrology, exploring yourself, your attributes, and how you're meant to be, you meet with this issue. This one is called how you've been raised, or social structures and constructs I believe in, or maybe coping mechanisms that harm me. And you really want to get out of all of that to live your best life. I mean, therapy is a great way to get that whole lot sorted. And please don't treat this as a manual for healing. If you have mental health bits that need help, get professional help, babe. You deserve it. But what the actual heck do we explore here? Okay, sweetheart, honey, we'll go into a few things that are shadow work, needs pyramid, emotions wheel, and healing aspects, and a bit more. So what are we doing here? To acquaint ourselves with a less explored side, the inner child, the inner teen, young adult. To know what wounds might have been inflicted upon us by our parents, society, and surroundings. Not all of us grow up in healthy families. Not all get to explore things safely. Some have been through hell on earth, wounded and beaten, yet alive. And frankly, alive is what matters most in here and now. As long as you made it here, I'm glad that you did. I love that you did so. You survived all the 100% of all the bad days and things. You're here, and that's what is the most important thing to me, and hopefully to you too. So let me squish you in a hug once more before we go into the heavy things out there. So kissy face, kissy face. If you dare say, hold my beer, tea, and coffee, I swear to unicorns, we're going to have an issue. So I'll need to go fetch my beer, tea, coffee first. So that we're on the same wavelength. So shadow work. Here I also dropped down a bunch of links to shadow work and the psychology, because all the psychology kind of like starts with the shadow work. It comes from the concept of the shadow self, which originates in Jungian psychology. According to Jung, a personality includes the persona, which is the personality that people show to the public, and the shadow self, which remains private or hidden. Unlike the persona, the shadow self often includes traits that a person does not like to show. However, Jung did not view the shadow as a negative or shameful part of a person's personality. To him, it was an important part of their psyche. The goal of shadow work is to assimilate the shadow and the persona so that a person can learn how to manage impulses they usually ignore, such as anger or greed. Jung also believed that the cognitive unconscious influences the shadow. The collective unconscious is a Jungian idea that refers to the collective memories and impulses of society as a whole. As a result, systematic issues such as racism also fit into Jung's idea of what the shadow self comprises. Just as shadow work might help a person confront the parts of their personality that usually they avoid, Jung thought it might allow them to address prejudices and impulses resulting from broader social ills. So the benefits of the shadow work is basically identifying and countering negative personal traits as well as negative traits that society has instilled in you or them or whomever. Learning to be more asserting of themselves, understanding the challenges other people face with their own shadow selves, confronting trauma, grief, and other challenging emotions, understanding how society, childhood, and various relationships influence their lives and interactions. So, in some cases, components of the shadow self may motivate good acts. For example, a person may find that confronting their implicit biases, which they may not usually think about, can help them work to change them. Similarly, being more aware of their anger may help a person channel that anger for good, such as by fighting or just a cause. Ways to practice shadow work. Shadow work is not a common practice. A few people are trained in this type of psychotherapy. It begins with a willingness to explore the shadow self, even if a person finds doing so scary or uncomfortable. Some specific strategies include dream analysis. Jung highly valued dreams as tools for assessing the unconscious and the shadow self. A person can log their dreams and look for repeating themes or symbols to see what they notice aspects of their mind. that they usually ignore. A person may also want to seek insight from a Jungian analyst. With that, okay, let's go with the next one. Journaling. Journaling can help a person explore their unconscious thoughts and desires by looking at patterns and themes. A person may follow prompts, tell stories, talk about their day, or engage in free association. Psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis was, according to Jung, the ideal avenue for exploring the shadow self. In psychoanalytic psychotherapy, an analyst helps a person interpret dream archetypes, symbols in their unconscious mind, and the true motives behind their actions. Sand tray therapy. Sand tray therapy uses sand trays to promote meditative mindfulness and to encourage a person to create scenes that accurately depict their inner life. This may help them explore their unconscious mind and shadow self. It is important to note that it may not always be possible or advisable to do shadow work alone. When a person has trauma or serious mental health concerns, they need support from a professional. So let's go over this a bit of dream analysis, journaling, psychoanalysis, and sand tray therapy. Jesus. So if you are anywhere like me, a person who actually remembers their dreams, you might get to the point of you at some point in life even having a premonition dreams. So as you get on with life, you see a certain type of dreams and you're like, oh my God, it's going to mean this and that, or oh my God, it's going to result in this and that. My own family has this kind of like theme within women, especially because even my grandmother, she likes to translate the dreams into a bit more practical things in life. So every time, and that's kind of like in my family as it runs, whenever we dream of teeth falling out, it means that one of our close people, friends, and relatives might get sick. But if you like dream of teeth falling out and it's bleeding, definitely somebody from the family is gonna get ill. That's kind of like being in the family for years, and that's kind of like that's a total thing that we believe in that we know is gonna definitely happen. So everybody has their own kind of dream and or correlation in a dream of something that happens, which they then kind of like unconsciously kind of feel like it might happen in reality. So it's kind of like maybe a bit of that woo-woo stuff that adds up to the whole of the thing. But if we take the dream analysis to the points of having trauma, of being abused, of being in toxic relationships, of being gaslit, and so many other things, we do realize that sometimes our insecurities, our anxieties, our worries, they show up in our dreams. So if we go to bed absolutely worried out of our brains about some topic, that might make our brain produce a dream in which all the bad scenarios happen, or depending on your mental constitution and your mental health, it might actually flip the script and show you something positive happening instead to make you change your approach to the situation or a thing. Journaling is also a great way to start analyzing yourself. So as you journal, you get to the point at first where you sit with your diary or your notebook and you look at it and you're like, why am I doing this? And then you start to write things like, what you've been doing throughout the day. And then you start to pick out these little things of yourself, just writing out something that's absolutely unrelated to what you have been doing throughout the day. It's kind of like you sitting there writing out like, oh, I have been doing this and that. And I felt, yes, that's the part which starts off. You start to write out how you felt, your emotional state during something that you were doing. And that also allows you to analyze yourself, how you feel doing certain things. So frankly, it's helpful if you know how to analyze yourself. But if not, let's start with shadow work for beginners. In Jungian psychology, shadow work involves the assistance of psychoanalyst who guides a person through their shadow self. Beginners find it beneficial to seek advice from a trained practitioner, either a Jungian psychoanalyst or somebody practicing a more contemporary version of shadow work. To be honest, here, this is also from an article, but if you go through, to a therapist, sometimes, most times, how it happens with the people, you go through multiple psychiatrists, multiple therapists until you find the right one. Because each one specializes in their own thing. And unless you find the right person to help you navigate through your experiences in the right way, some therapists tend to be a bit more judgmental, and they actually damage your psyche a bit more than they actually heal it. So not all size gonna fits all, but it's a situation where you gotta go and try a few therapists to see where you feel more safe, where you feel more understood. And so that's kind of like one of the ways to do that. But if you want to try it out yourself, first of all, go slowly, being mindful that shadow work can be difficult and upsetting. Practicing self-care and compassion when unexpected thoughts or feelings come up, and approaching the shadow self with the spirit of curiosity and acceptance. It's also worth noting that shadow work is just one way to explore the characteristics of a person perceives as shameful or undesirable. So, many types of therapy, including cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can help a person better understand their self-perceptions and make their implicit beliefs more explicit. So let's go with the prompts and exercises. Shadow work exercises focus on helping a person bring into the light that which was previously hidden in the dark. If a person wants to begin the process alone, they can consider these journaling prompts. So journaling prompt is basically you sitting down with yourself in a kind of like as much quiet place, or as much as a place without bothersome beings or whatever. And you get your journal out, notebook, freaking notepad, laptop, doesn't matter, and you start typing in. So you get a few questions here which might provoke certain things. So one of the questions is, what things do you most fear others discovering about you? So this kind of gives you an idea of what would be your fear, what you see as maybe shameful about yourself, as dirty, disgusting, as dark, and not so good. And then you start to dig yourself into, but why? I once had a very good person tell me that if you want to get to the cause of things, if you want something and you desire something really bad, or you think a certain way, ask yourself 3 times the question, why? So, for example, a statement that I hate dogs, or something, I don't like dogs, and then you go, why? Because they're loud, they're obnoxious, they're crazy, and sometimes you don't necessarily kind of like know, what they think or what's up in their heads. Why? Because during my experiences with the dogs, they were like crazy enough to try and bite me. Why? Because I was a kid, and when I was a kid, I had situations where even my neighbor's dogs were crazy enough to just like hunt me and bite, bite my legs bad. And since then, I don't like dogs. That's basically, because I had really bad encounters with certain types of dogs, and that led me to like not be as, happy about them in general sense. But that's the personal experiences. So that is why it's there. So then the next question is, do you feel shame? Do you ever feel shame? Why? So these questions, why, they prompt you to think deeper into where it came from. What are your biggest triggers, and where do you feel they come from? So at first, when you answer these questions, you might already see from a side yourself and be able to analyze yourself better. But if you are quite far away from it, which tends to be the most common case with some people, is that they don't see their triggers. So if you, for example, here is like, what are your biggest triggers? If you cannot identify those by yourself, one of the best ways to identify them is to go to your closest friends, if you have those, or closest relatives, if you have those, and ask them, what do you think are my biggest, like, when do I outburst a lot, or when do I get angry? And then try to analyze that situation and then point out when you were angry, or you were a certain way, or you were, within a certain emotional state, and then track back to where it started, what caused it, what was the prequel to the whole situation. So then what are your negative self-images or thoughts about yourself? So what you don't like physically, what you don't like how you react to things, and then you analyze where it came from, or who might have said you what during which time of your life regarding your outer appearance, or how you cope with things, or how you deal with things, and basically have somebody remark about your way of behavior or remark your way of outer appearance, which kind of stuck with you. I know myself, like I had a similar situations when it comes to outer appearance, is that I have been nagged a lot that I'm skinny. And for me, it was for a long time that I did not like people saying that. And some people say it in the sense like, oh my God, that's such a good thing. And some others say that, oh my God, it's such a bad thing. So there's no one way to look at it or one way to digest it. In my case, it's just like my metabolism is a certain way, so I cannot necessarily be, any bigger than I am. But with years, I found out that basically I can gain weight. And one of the ideas that was stuck in my head is that I should gain more weight, because at a certain age I was a certain weight, and then it dropped rapidly because of anxiety and life experiences and things in life that happened. And since then I could not gain that weight which I lost, which was not like a small number. And that kind of kept me at my kind of like size variable, which does not fluctuate way too much. So like you also can get those situations in your life where you have been told something, or you have been nagged about something, which changes you in your perspective on it, instead of seeing it in a more kind of like healthy way. Because we all kind of go through these situations where people they're not kind of like healthily understanding things themselves, and they remark things without regard for another person. And those remarks and those like toxic expressions, sometimes they do stick to the person for years, until we actually do go through the, therapy and get rid of that stuff. So when you are very angry at others, what things do you think about them? Also, what gets you to be angry? What makes you explode? What do your recent dreams tell you about your fears, if you have those? So shadow work has influenced various types of spirituality, including astrology and other New Age beliefs. Some people believe that doing shadow work can result in a spiritual awakening or connection with the spiritual world. Jung himself did not rule out the influence of spirituality on the psyche, even though most of his theories focus on biological explanations for why humans think and behave the way they do. As people have mixed and combined Jung's ideas into those of many other belief systems, there is no single model of shadow work in spirituality. Summary. Developed in the 20th century, aim is to assimilate parts of plants and blah blah blah. So shadow work problems. So here you will have more questions. So that too kind of leads to the idea of people who go through the shadow work. They start analyzing themselves, and they start to look through things in life. And one of the things which begin sort of with you is that most therapists, they go into childhood, because a lot of therapists, a lot of psychology in general is based that most of your traumas and most of your responses come from your childhood. So depending on the environment and encounters and things that happen throughout your childhood, that impacts you as a grown-up. So depending on how your childhood was, you might go through the inner child sort of experiences where, for example, my therapist asked me to basically go back, way back as much as I could, and think back to how I was as a child. What did I need as a child? What was I looking forward to as a child? What were my dreams? What were my worries? Where my anxiety stemmed from? Because like my whole of the childhood is just generally one huge PTSD, and that went on into my young adult years. So we went into integrating all of that into, life to heal the inner child. So all that what your inner child wanted to do, you start to do it in your adult life to kind of like give a satisfaction to your inner child that you tried it, you did it, you managed it, and kind of like have that little happy moments or like big happy moments, whichever you want to go about them. And that soothes your inner child, that allows you to process things a bit more, to grow out of that anger, or more like moments where you felt small, and then you kind of grow a little bit out of that, and then you try to process things a bit more differently. But there's a fantastic moment where you heal your inner child and you get the toys you wanted to get finally, and you play with them and you knock yourself out happy, and you play your computer games for like, hours, or you go on a trip, or you do like that little thing which you wanted to do when you were a kid and you could never do it. And you finally do something that is relevant or has the same meaning. Kind of helps you, be happy about it. But as you heal your inner child and you go through these portions of crying and emotional outbursts and all of that, you get to the point of meeting your inner teenager. And that's where the rage, the anger comes from, and that's where you start to understand that, oh, hey, hello. So actually, I'm that angry at society or parents or friends or situations and everything else. And that's where, for example, I met with a situation where I genuinely wanted to go freaking berserk, and arson was like the top thing in my head. I'm like, arson! And I had to tone it down and understand that no, that's not the way of things, and that's not actually what's going to help out. But your inner teen is that repressed anger, is that, mechanism. There's like a lot of mechanisms within your head that keeps you alive. So if you had a very dysfunctional family and your childhood was a whack, let's put it simply, it's like, that's tragic, but anyway. And once you've been a certain way, you heal your inner child, you meet your inner teen, and that's where you kind of, for your own self, have to learn how to express your anger in a healthy way. Because apparently there's healthy ways of expressing your anger, your concerns, and your emotions, and highly unhealthy way of doing that. And if, like me, you did not necessarily have parents who guided you through the process of healthily expressing your feelings and emotions, you start to learn that in your adult life. But that helps you in the long run, though. So learning how to get things expressed healthy is a really, really good way to get on with the rest of your shadow work, and basically integrating the parts of you that you kind of like disassociated yourself with or distanced yourself from. So that's like one of the ways to get it done. No, there we go. As a child, were you ever told how to react or feel? Oh yeah, all the time. And then you go, what was it? When did it happen? What was this thing told to you when you were acting a certain way? Blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of questions to try out for yourself eventually, and see how you feel about it and what do you think about it. So, dun dun dun. Next part. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. A few articles and links to go and explore it. And then Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a model for understanding the motivations for human behavior. It maps different motivations into a pyramid, with each level representing a different human need. These include psychological needs, safety, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. The psychologist Abraham Maslow created this model. He believed that people could not focus on the needs higher up the pyramid until they had mostly obtained trusted source. the needs in the lower levels. Maslow also felt that fulfillment in the life results from being able to meet the needs in all 5 levels. So there we go. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the base level is psychological needs, such as food, water, shelter, so you're not out there in the cold. The next one is safety needs, security and stability. So if you are having your food, your water, but you are in a highly toxic environment, in a highly worrisome and anxious environment where you cannot necessarily be safe, where you do not feel safe, where there are troubles all around, you will not necessarily be thinking about anything else on the pyramid, which is love and belonging, esteem needs, and self-actualization. You'll be very much worried about your security and stability. So think above. And that will be your priority, So love and belonging comes next with relationships and feeling accepted. So once your safety and stability is sorted, so you have some sort of income, you have your food, you have your water, you have this basic needs covered, you feel safe at, wherever place you are staying at, and you don't feel like you're being threatened, and you don't feel like you have to survive from day to day. So your nervous system calms the hell down, and that's where you start to feel that you need connections. Friends, family, lovers, does not matter. Relationships. Feeling accepted, feeling needed, feeling like you're part of something, that's where it comes in. So that's when you start building your kind of like friend circle, community circle, all of that. After it, you get the self-esteem needs, so self-confidence and respect. So that's when you start building, oh, hey, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I being like way too kind of like accommodating for toxic people? Or do I have to have more self-respect for myself so that I'm not being overly used by the people around me? So that's where you start to analyze your patterns and patterns of the people around you, on whether like the amount of interactions and what you do for them or what they do for you is anywhere near equal, or something is disbalanced and you need to level it out. And that's when you pay attention to what you like, dislike, how you feel about certain things, and you start to create the self-confidence and self-respect first. And then the respect of your community towards you and all that. And then there's the self-actualization, which is reaching one's potential. So once you understand yourself, once you understand how you interact with people, once you understand how to interact with people and what are your boundaries, what are your emotional boundaries, psychological boundaries, your needs are met, your expectations are there, this is what you want, this is what you crave, this is what you desire, and there's this like baseline of things that you want to do. And if somebody else does not meet the line, or does not accept your boundaries and your requests, you know what to do with them. So with all of that, there's like the 5 needs, psychological needs, there's that. So it's food, water, sex, warmth, shelter, and sleep. Safety needs, living or working in a safe environment, having a stable and sufficient source of income, feeling protected from crime or abuse, being in good physical health with no serious illnesses. Love and belonging, making friends, giving and receiving affection, emotional intimacy, feeling accepted by loved ones. Esteem needs. Self-worth, which is when a person feels they have value. Competency, which involves feeling skilled and knowledgeable. Dignity, which is feeling worthy of respect. Independence, which in the context means a person feels they can do things for themselves. And esteem. From others may involve respect from peers, acknowledgement for one's achievements, status or prestige, fame or reputation. And there goes self-actualization. Realistic perception of reality, acceptance of imperfections, flexibility and spontaneity in pursuing goals, autonomy and responsibility, consistent and strong morals, appreciation for life, and creativity. So that last bit comes in basically when everything else is met and you sorted out everything else. If you go pursuing your creativity or a certain thing throughout, a lower levels of a pyramid, most often than not, you are going to either write about or create something based on the tragedy or needs or issues that you see around yourself and that you feel, and you'll put it in your work. or you will absolutely disassociate the heck out of yourself and you will create something absolutely else, which is going to be your comfort zone or your way for your imagination to put you outside of this discomfort, this anxiety, this stress, into something that will give you some level of freedom, which you create for yourself. But that's your brain works, that's not me. So what happens if a person cannot meet their needs? So psychological, physical illness, hoarding behavior, safety, anxiety, psychological trauma, love and belonging, loneliness, antisocial behavior, esteem, feeling worthless, feeling invisible or unappreciated, low self-confidence, and depression, self-actualization, boredom, cynicism, lack of meaning in life. So you basically are not going to be your best self if your needs are not met. So that's a little bit of that, and yeah, there you go. A little bit of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now we're going to emotional healing and processing. And so here we'll begin with an article from Psychology Today written by Victoria Maxwell. There we go. She writes, when I learned I had bipolar disorder, there we go. My shrink, he quickly became my ex-shrink. I find a few of them said BD was just like diabetes, you know, the whole, it's like any other medical illness, and that's why you take medication for it. I heartily agree there are biological factors involved with mental illness, and the medication I take has been a godsend, but it's not. And I repeat, it's not like having diabetes or any illness that is considered physical. A psychiatric disorder diagnosis is different. The illness attacks the body and mind, but more importantly, the sense of self. I'm sure some physical illness affect a person's identity and confidence as well, but there is something that is particularly cutting above the stigma of mental illness. So there is a lot of things to look at. My old identity shattered. Who am I if I have mental disorder? So you start to literally reevaluate yourself. You start to look at yourself. If this really you, is this your illness? And it does a lot, does a number on you. As much as I believe there are differences in being diagnosed with a mental illness, what I've come to realize is that any severe or chronic illness ravages our sense of confidence in how we will manage in the world and what life actually means. Take any traumatic event, suicide attempt, diagnosis of cancer, whether the event is mental or physical, it doesn't matter. As healing begins, several stages start to occur. Each happen at varying rates and depths unique to the person undergoing the crisis. No right or wrong, but a healing pattern unique to fingerprint. I say healing, because this is not about cure. It's about creating wholeness, not health. Creating meaning so that the wounds of our illness no longer pain us, but become part of our living narrative, enriching ourselves and those around us. The 6-stage healing process is one that I discovered I've gone and continue to go through recovery that I've seen in others. Although described as a sequential process, it's more accurately pictured as a woven tapestry. When one part of tapestry is restored, all aspects of the piece shifts and improves. So first one is acceptance. Denial of the illness is the greatest barrier, acceptance the greatest liberator. When we start, albeit slowly perhaps, to accept our illness, mental illness or otherwise, only then can healing begin. Often the longest leg and biggest barrier in the road is the journey to acceptance. Then there's the insight. Even the smallest degree of admission allows insight to begin. It is only then that I will notice and then have the ability to monitor details of the illnesses, warning signs, behaviors, exacerbating mood swings, frequency of shifts, action. At each stage of insight, I can craft a plan of action to enhance recovery or take steps to enlist support to help me do so. If I see staying up late worsens my illness, I learn to turn into bed earlier. If connecting with friends helps me be buoyant, I find ways to nurture my social ties. Self-esteem. As I make positive choices, I see how these decisions and actions impact my health, rebuilding my sense of competency, self-efficacy, and in turn my self-esteem. This encourages further acceptance, insight, and action. Healing. When I allow myself to accept an illness, I would rather not and take actions to combat it. Healing is a natural byproduct. Healing needs to be defined very broadly. Healing does not necessarily mean remissions of sympathy, fewer stays in the hospital, or return to the level of functioning pre-illness. This is, in my definition, the restoration of a sense of meaning, purpose, sense of self, and quality of life, despite struggles with the illness. And meaning. As meaning occurs, the self returns to new wholeness, complete with these past new experiences and new choices. It is here that meaning can unfold. By discovery, meaning from a otherwise painful experience is birthed. Discovery of familial history, personal strengths, bonds of friendships, and belief systems play a pivotal role in crafting purpose. The significance an illness holds differs from person to person. Every malady emerges from unique sets of life circumstances. Distinct details from which the disorder arises shape the kind of meaning harvested. If we accept illness, seek to understand its mechanics, importance can be derived even from our darkest hour. This isn't to diminish or ignore the pain experienced by those of us with devastating illness and our families. On the contrary, it's to honor struggles and celebrate the power that is retrieved. Remember, facing what is an act of bravery. Wholeness and meaning are hard-won. Finding meaning isn't dependent upon comprehending the why or what of it all. Paradoxically, it is as we learn to live without knowing the whys that peace and meaning emerge. This helps navigate the section. So then we have the wheel of emotion. So as we learn, for example, that we have CPTSD or we have BD or BPD, ADHD, and dyslexia, and things start to roll on and we learn about ourselves a little bit more. We start to try and digest things a little bit more. So in my case, I have CPTSD and I'm on the autism spectrum. So I'm a wreck. But I've been learning how to deal with it and how to work with it. So the emotions wheel also helped me find that there's more emotions to learn from and there's more emotions to pay attention to. And they help me explain better what I feel. So either that or one of these outer emotional, explanations help me identify the very, core of it, where it stems from, to make me think about, oh, hey, so this is what it is. So where is it coming from? Why is it making me feel a certain way? Why does it do it to me this way? It's a mess. But yeah, the emotions wheel does help you get a better understanding of your core emotions and how they spread out and how they, I wouldn't say spread out, but how they vary. And there's a bunch of that. So there's another emotions classification. It's a little bit different, and it also gives you a little bit of an idea of what it is: grief, sadness, vigilance. So that helps, and also helps you put your emotions into words, let's say. So yeah, make connections, take action, variables of the Geneva wheel. That's what it is, a Junto wheel, and the bottom line. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. So if you want to go and explore a little bit of the emotional wheel and a little bit of this and that, off you go, and I see you in the next part.